Okay, so I went to see Dark Phoenix and a lot of critics claimed that it was bad. But as I don't like to listen to paid sources tell me anything, I went to see it for myself. So before I start, I will not hammer home any inaccuracies between the film and the comics. I gave up on that a long time ago. Now I just accept that the studios will just take a broad concept of an arc and make a movie out of it. So the film opens up just like in the trailer, where we see the space mission going wrong and the X-Men going to save the day. Before that, we see a nice scene of Jean's childhood and how she came to be with Xavier to begin with. So the X-Men go up, Raven wishes that they hadn't, and the day is saved anyway. Except obviously Jean, of course, being hit by the Phoenix Force. This is where the first round of problems arise. See, like in The Last Jedi, they screw up the entire concept of space. When the team is rescuing the astronauts, only half of the time is a spacesuit even required for whomever it is on the screen at the time. I mean, there's even dialogue dedicated to the fact that the shovel will vent atmosphere and needs to be sealed before the X-Men can rescue the astronauts. But during a lot of the scenes during this period, we see it's already exposed, so people should be dying. But that's all I've got to say about the beginning of the movie, so I'll just get into the thick of it here. So Jean gets hit by a mysterious power which they refuse to call the Phoenix Force for reasons I don't understand. She starts feeling good about life until she starts breaking down the mental barriers that Charles put up in her head when she was a child. This is where another first round of problems start to come up. See, with the exception of Logan, every X-Men movie seems to always downplay Xavier to make him look weaker than Jean. Which I hate to spoil for a lot of viewers, but Jean isn't stronger than Charles unless she has the Phoenix Amp. But during this time Jean is breaking down her mental barriers, everyone, including Hank, the guy who stood next to Xavier through everything, says that Charles was wrong to put up the mental barriers in her head to begin with. Also around this time, Raven starts to argue against Charles that he enjoys all the attention that the team gets for saving the humans, because apparently wanting to save people and have them view you as heroes instead of monsters is a problem. I understand that they wanted to show the different perspectives here, but its delivery kind of falls a little bit flat. Had the movie shown us the aftermath of the previous film, where most of mankind hates mutants, this would have gone over a lot better. Having the film open up in a dystopian way where most people hate mutants because of the events of Apocalypse would have made a lot more sense. Which, combined with all the praise they received after they saved the astronauts, would have made it all go together a lot more cohesively. If it had been done this way, they could have showed a time jump card, for example, like 6 months later, the scene would have come and it would have made a lot more sense, because then Jean would have had a little bit more time to go through more changes instead of it being a rapid pace of events. As is presented, Raven claiming Charles protects and saves humans just for his ego is just rather stupid, since only 2 movies ago she saw what would happen should the humans see them as anything other than good. During this scene in particular, it really shot home at how much this movie was going to be a feminist go power wet dream. If you were hoping it wouldn't be, I hate to say it, but sadly it is. In fact, there are enough times that the gender power fantasy is brought into play that the scene often suffers from it. But moving past Raven's interaction with Charles, we move on to the next big thing that happens, where Jean has an episode from overstimulation, which just causes her to black out. Charles tries to enter her mind and find out what's going on. During this time, Charles points out that the mental barriers that he put up in her mind are starting to come down. Raven claims that he is wrong for having built them in the first place. There is another disconnect here, because Charles built those barriers to help her progress as a person and not feel held down by her past actions with her powers, which is clearly shown to be the case when in the very first scenes, Jean claims that no one can fix her. So again, you're trying to demonize Charles when he did something right. That's just bad writing. So Jean flees to her father to find out why he let Charles take her. But as Charles pointed out to Raven throughout the entire film up to this point, wrong misstep and she will be viewed as a monster, not a hero or someone special. To hammer home this point, the scene where Jean is in the car with her parents and they're talking about the radio, Jean's mother even asks her if she's the one changing the station, implying that her mother and father are okay with what she is, and are only not okay with it once something goes wrong. So after Jean talks to her father, she fights the X-Men and offs Raven and pretends to be broken up about it. This is where the bad acting comes into play, because she doesn't really feel as if she really cares, which again is another writing inconsistency. At this point in the film, we are led to believe that Jean's emotions are cranked to 11. The problem though is that after she kills Raven and she goes to see Eric, aka Magneto, to ask how does she stop killing. But if she really felt bad about it, shouldn't she have gone through a longer period of suffering? Instead, we see her wreck some military underlings with ease because of the plot. And of course, then Jean flees with Eric upset about her actions. Hank then comes to Eric revealing that Jean is the one who killed Raven. Eric swoops up to go hunt Jean down and kill her to avenge Mystique. At this time, Charles and crew read Eric's mind and find out where Jean is, and everyone sets off to New York. Now, I haven't touched on the true antagonists of the film, because to say that they're handled poorly would be an understatement. The Debari want the Phoenix Force to try and rebuild their species, or so they claim. Since Jean is its vessel, they attempt to convince her to come and help them. That's their entire role. So Magneto and co versus Xavier and co outside of where the Jabari are hiding Jean. The fight scene here is horrible for a bunch of reasons. It just proves how useless anyone who isn't Magneto, Storm, or Charles really is. So I'm just gonna move right on along from that. So Magneto is up first and tries to kill Jean, but of course we've got about 20 or so more minutes for plot left, so he fails and gets tossed out of a window. Charles is up next, and of course being nerfed into the ground can't do anything, so they have him be punishment walked up the stairs in what has to look like the worst CGI movement I've ever seen in any movie. I would feel better if you told me they had people in like blue suits making him move. I mean, seriously, grab a Raggedy Ann doll and drag it by its hair, and that's what the movements look like. Now, of course, at this time, Charles tells Jean the same thing he's been telling her the entire movie. He made the mental barriers to help her, not hurt her. So she reads his mind and finds out that this is the truth and accepts it. At this point, Jean breaks down and gives Jessica Chastain part of the Phoenix Force before Cyclops jumps in the window and blasts her away. Then, of course, the military shows up, treating them to no one's surprise, just like Charles said they would if things went south, and takes them all into custody. Which brings us to the climax of the film. The Jabari attack a transport of the mutants to get Jean's power and get off just as you'd expect, which all leads to a talking showdown. Instead of Jean just offing Chastain's character and containing any backlash, she gets tricked into believing that she has to blow herself up with her in space to win. This leads to both characters dying, and that's the film. Overall, the film's plot is really underwhelming. The acting in certain scenes definitely felt hit or miss, specifically when it comes to Sophie Turner and Jennifer Lawrence's performances. Given that one is the driver of the plot and the other the catalyst for much of the film's climax, it's rather disappointing. It felt as if the film was trying to constantly build towards this giant payoff that never came. So would I see it again? Maybe on Netflix as background noise while I'm doing something? Is it better than Last Stand? Yes, but to be fair, Last Stand didn't set a high bar to begin with, so it's not really a hard thing to pull off. The fight scenes are okay, but to anyone hoping for another Quicksilver scene, you won't get one here as he gets sidelined really early after the first fight. At this point, I would say that they need to stop making X-Men films because every other movie seems to be hit or miss. That's Dark Phoenix though, a lukewarm movie with a plot that had it been done right could have been really great. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below if you're gonna go see it, or if you've already seen it, what your thoughts on the film are.
Orie! Izayoi! Win!